There's a a Shaker hymn called How Can I Keep From Singing? How Can I Keep From Singing? It's a beautiful spiritual Christian hymn. And the melody works really well with this. The idea is anything that keeps us reciting the Buddha's name, just remembering to keep it running in the mind, is a good thing. So that's what created this song. And everybody can sing along. The last 3 words of each verse is, I'll never and never stop reciting. I'll never stop reciting. Like that. I'll never stop reciting. To save creation, he made a land where suffering's gone, a place of liberation. So use his vows and be reborn, in lotus flowers delighting. Never stop reciting. The Saha land is a place of pain. We're on page 14. The struggle and contention to find a world of bliss. You first set your intention. Those men or women, rich or poor, rebirth not delighting, apply themselves with a single mind, and never stop. Hold on. Reciting. He didn't do it that first time. Why'd you do it the second time? I praise the Buddha's compassionate vows with melodies unending. My body lives in the world of heart is world transcending. With bodhisattvas joyfully, I'll soon be reuniting, until I reach Amitabha's land. Hold it this time. I'll never stop reciting. Try that again. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Amitabha It's getting better every year, isn't it? People remember it. Can we please turn to page 9? Page 9. Okay, I'm going to put my palms together. People are invited to join me if you care to. We'll recite the Buddha's name. I'll give you a line, you give it back. Let's see, let's wait till everybody gets settled in here. This is we're going to be looking at the section on monastics, and it's interesting the order of these. Following the monastic section is meditation. A whole bunch of verses on what to do when you meditate. Following that comes personal hygiene. Putting on your robe, brushing your teeth. What's that?
I don't know if you're talking to somebody over there or...
Okay. Yeah. We're kind of waiting for everybody to settle in here. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a line. Here we go. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha.
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 Homage to the great flower garland scripture.
Homage to the great flower garland scripture
Of the Buddha's expanded Mahayana teaching.
The Buddha's expanded Mahayana teaching.
And the ocean-wide flower garland assembly.
And the ocean-wide flower garland assembly.
Of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Okay, great. Page 9. So last night we read through the verses. We're halfway down. We're on paragraph 1, 2, 3 on page 9. So let me read them. Let me read them one at a time, and we'll just refresh our memory here. When I renounce the householder's life, I think, may all living beings be unhindered in leaving the householder's life and gain a liberated mind. So the first wish is a wish for no obstacles. I'm always surprised in the sutra that the phrasing, the thinking is, may nothing bad happen. Right? Notice the way that's done. It's not, I want everything good. That's here too, but it's usually balanced with a really pragmatic view. This is a realistic view of life, which is bad stuff happens. And even with the best of intentions, you get thwarted, you get obstructed. I really wanted to, but the phone rang and I couldn't. So the way this is phrased is, when I renounce the householder's life, I go, there's a key to this whole chapter, go from me to everybody. And as you go from me to everybody, you give away concern for the self. So, may all living beings, when I do this, I want all living beings to leave home smoothly. If you phrase it in the positive, may all living beings succeed. No obstacles. That's the way it's thought, right? So it's a very interesting mindset. Not airy-fairy, right? This is realistic. Stuff happens. And you got the best idea, you got the best intention, and something goes wrong, right? So that's the wise person's perspective. It's not naive. It's not simple, right? It's like, yeah, you might really want to become a Buddha, but then you discover your feet are made of clay and you're walking through mud and you stick, So that's just a notice. Notice how it's phrased. It's very realistic. And the wish is, may none of that stuff happen. May it all go smoothly. Okay, for me and for everybody. Okay, when I enter the monastery, I think, may all living beings proclaim all kinds of principles free from error and contention. So the way I reflect on this is, what initially gives you the idea that you could change your life from what it is now to being a monastic, being a clergy person, being a full-time cultivator? Probably it's somebody says something. You hear something. You hear the words of someone whose voice just resonates with you. You hear somebody praising somebody. Whoa, that monk is really special. He's got real kung fu. You know. Or you read something. In my case, it was books. I ran into the Sixth Patriarch Sutra in Chinese and English when I was in high school, and I knew it was different. So the verse says, when I enter the monastery, I think, may all beings proclaim all kinds of principles, means be able to expound the Dharma and not be wrong and not cause arguments. Look at that. Now, this was spoken in India in a time when there were lots and lots and lots of teachings available. Just like now, right? India has always been Mother India, full of schools of thought. You think of right now it's the Hindus don't like the Muslims, and nobody likes the Sikhs, and the Jains just stay away from everyone. And, you know, of course I'm exaggerating. There's lots of harmony, but there's also conflict. And if you, I've done interfaith in India, and if you decide to take it on, you have to pay attention to how tall the chairs are at the table. You don't want to give any group a taller chair, right? That's an insult to other groups who feel like they should be closest to God, right? So if they're farther away, if you make them farther away from God, that's an insult. Okay, so people are like that. So when I enter the monastery, I think, may all beings proclaim all kinds of principles and not get it wrong, and also not cause argument. How skillful that is, to be able to talk to all the different teams and not make anybody upset, and find a principle that everybody agrees with. What are they in interfaith? Food and music. Those are the two. And if you once you get people eating together, generally their hearts open. And if you can get everybody to move a little bit to music that pleases them, that doesn't praise one God over the other, then you kind of open the floor is open and you can talk. Once you get to principles, amazingly, the thing that everybody can agree on is basic ethics. No killing, stealing, lust, and lying. Those four. Four of the five basic Buddhist precepts. You find them right in the Ten Commandments. You find them right in the Quran. You find them right in Patanjali's yoga aphorisms. You know. So those four, and if you can get that kind of an agreement, you're talking. You know, and there's an opportunity to listen. Whereas before it was just tall hats, all wanting to be first and not wanting to be last. So, free from error and contention. Look at the wisdom in that. You know, as soon as you go out and spout your truth, you'll find somebody who disagrees. So, he says, as I enter the monastery, I want to continue to hear the things that keep me moving forward and inspired, and I don't want to hear it wrong, and I don't want to hear ideas that cause other people to puff up. You can't say that. You are an infidel, not true, right? You are a heretic. You are a disbeliever. You just got to stay away from that. Because why? We will happily kill each other over words. Humans kill each other over words. What other creature on the planet does that? You know, you say it wrong? No, that's wrong. That's not correct. You're Shia. No, I'm Sunni. Oh, no. You know. So, when I visit senior or junior teachers, I think, may all living beings skillfully serve their teachers and elders and learn to practice wholesome dharmas. Okay. Who would think that You leave the home life, you leave the householder's life, you go away from your spouse, you go away from your kids, you go away from your mom, you go away from your dad, you go away from your kids if you have them, or in the Buddhist case they weren't born yet, and everybody thinks, oh, you're going off to like be a hermit, you're going to be and live in the mountains, in the cave, right? You enter the monastery, you are in an intensely social environment. Monasteries are incredibly human-centric, right? What does it say? You got to align yourself with junior teachers, with senior teachers, with who's below you. I was watching yesterday at Zhao Ke, right? And I'm in the front of the line. You turn the corner, you can see who's behind you, right? So here's myself, and then there is Heng Sure, and there's Jin Ro Sure, and there's Jin Tian Sure, and Jin Deng Sure, and then following them is who? The novice monk. Our novice monk has to go behind the bhikshunis. Why? Fewer precepts. But he gets to go in front of all the laymen, including the ones who are wearing their robes, looking very dignified. Yeah? But the layman wearing the robe and the sash walks in front of the layman wearing the robe. And the layman wearing the robe walks in front of the people without any robes. All the people without any robes. You know, you don't even get to walk. Then you better get it straight, because if Qin Shenshi stepped in front of, Jin Dengshi, right? Everybody go, he doesn't, obviously. What's that? You did? Ah! What happened?
We all do it.
What happened? Who put him in his place?
Yeah, confession.
Very funny. So, right? I mean, who would think? All these rules, all these people. And the Buddha, being clear on what people do, gave one simple principle: seniority. Who came first? Now, I mean, that's the women are saying, "Oh yeah." Heng Sure would walk and run everybody if that were true. So he also it was embedded in the culture. So women didn't go in front of men, even in the Sangha. That didn't work, unless, in this case, women go in front of men. Notice. So he's a man, but he walks behind the women. So the Buddha said seniority, and then bhikshus, bhikshunis, shramaneras, shramanerikas, shikshamanas, upasakas, upasikas, and followers. So that was absolutely, totally, uncontestably revolutionary in India, because India was built on caste, and caste is ironclad. You do not mess with caste. Never mind you're a human being. If you're a chandala, if you're an outcast, and your shadow falls on me, the Brahmin, I will never wash it clean. So if an outcast shadow falls on me, I have the right to punish him up to death. And so outcasts ring a bell, so everybody knows they're coming, so we can avoid having their shadow fall on them, much less, meet them, be friends, get married, blah, 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 Talk about rigid social structure, right? That's India. The Buddha said, baloney, or words to that effect. The Buddha said, no. He said, whoever leaves home first walks first. Turning Indian social structure on its head. Just saying, that stuff's external. What counts is what happens inside. And everyone goes, oh, I bow to you. 'Cause that's huge, what the Buddha did. He just took the social caste, which was absolutely unquestioned, and said, nope. Who came first? And among those who came first, it's how many precepts you hold. So, junior and senior teachers, may all beings skillfully serve them and learn to practice wholesome dharmas. The next thing that you learn when you enter the Sangha is that you don't know nothing. So, you learn about we have a book called the Shramanera Vinaya, the Shami Lu, and it talks about how you observe whether or not your teacher is napping before you knock on the door. To say, Sherfo, the guests have come. How do you, if your teacher is engaged in conversation, you don't interrupt him. All these very, I guess you say, wise observations of human behavior and how to fit yourself in. And it's kind of the Shramanera Vinaya is psychology for generations to be able to live together in harmony, for people from all kinds of backgrounds to be able to come together and not fight with each other, not roll back onto their old habits. Dharma Master Lai was a quartermaster in the Navy, U.S. Navy, and here he is with his experiences. And here's David Bernstein, who was a college kid from Rhode Island, who'd never been in the Navy. And they're getting along together. Over here is Tim Testu, who's the ship's diver. He's as close to the Navy SEAL as you get in being the ship's diver down. Tough character. And over here is Fred Clarer, who's kind of a mama's boy from a wealthy family in New York City. And everybody's getting along together. And more or less, And luckily Sherpa was there to keep the bloodshed from getting, but... And Sherpa couldn't prevent the men and the women from fighting but he kept us, within the men's group. So the Buddha faced worse. We're talking about humans. The Buddha had to bring together, Asuras, Kinnaras, Garudas. Spiritual beings came and bowed to him. But the Sangha order here, you're visiting junior and senior teachers. As you come in, you don't just waltz in full of ego, full of habits, with taking your coffee just the way you like it. You have to learn the basics to suddenly your center is different. When you're at home, your center is mostly your appetite. I want the flavors just right. I want to be able to, my favorite show, when it's on, everything else stops. When the phone rings, I want people to take the message and then let me know later. And you get it all aligned just the way you want it, based on the way you want it. Right? Your center is your desire, satisfying your desire and minimizing your frustration. When you're living in the Sangha, the center is different. Right? The center is essentially creating space so everybody can cultivate without obstructing each other. That's basically it. And the time and the space is organized so that practices can go on. Probably if you had to say what is the center of the monastery, it's the schedule. Because it's a bodhi manda. It's a field for awakening. Right? And so the bell rings, people show up. You don't show up 5 minutes late because you might be there. The incense wasn't lit if you don't show up, right? If you don't show up 5 minutes early, or if you do, you sit quietly, And so it's organized. The center is not what I want to please my senses, which is the home. The household is what I want to please my senses, and damn well better be right, or I'm going to make it right. And that's kind of the way. Now that's harsh. Maybe it's if you have a really bodhisattva's heart, your family is designed to please your spouse, to serve your kids. That's I'm talking to the lowest common denominator. But you change that when you enter the monastery, because why? There's a really good soundbite. You're living alone together. In a monastery, you're living alone together. Right? You try to accomplish what the Buddha did under the tree in the woods for 6 years, but you're in a building with a roof, with a lot of people. So all of that structure is there to allow you, within reason, to live alone together. And food is there, at the right time. Nothing died to feed you, and you wash the dishes and you're done. When we stayed with Sherpa, the food, one of his vows were, not a vow, one of his practices was not spending money on himself. And so and he also observed that America wasted food a lot. So what did we do in Gold Mountain? Our Master Lai and I don't know if Doug ever did the dumpster diving thing, but we went out and found our food behind Safeway. And you can't do it now. It's too many laws involved, but lawsuits. But at the time, Safeway can't sell peaches with brown spots on them. Right? That's considered day-old produce. So what are they going to do? They would haul it out to the dumpster. And crates, peaches with brown spots on them, 2 days old. So we would go back and sometimes check with the produce manager, and he would, give us a nod or something. We'd bring home these crates full of peaches with spots on them. Cut the spot off, it's fresh peach by the dozens and dozens, And milk was tricky because milk spoils quick. But we got, produce and mostly produce and fruit, and bread, day-old bread. We knew where to get that day-old bread. Our food for years at Gold Mountain came from dumpster diving. We didn't buy food. And then Gofa got the big chunk, remember? There was the chocolate factory, and Gofa came home with 23 pounds of big chunk that had melted. And we had a guy, our Gofa Olson had a famous sweet tooth. And Gofa came back with this 23-pound chocolate from the back of the chocolate factory that he had scoped out. And he was in heaven. And Gofa was so excited. And he was the cook for a while. And so we had chocolate and the mashed potatoes. we had chocolate soup. that was oh my God. Finally.
In the early morning, me and Paul would get up. After Zalpa, we'd go down to the big produce market. Where all the big semi-trucks come in, South San Francisco. And that's where we get the deals. We get the day-old crates and stuff for $1.
Day-old crates for $1.
And we bring in crates of everything. Cauliflower, broccoli,
bok choy,
carrots, by the case lot. And just bring it back to Gold Mountain.
Yeah.
Even mushrooms.
And that's, fresh from the farms in the Sacramento Delta, That was day old. Yeah. So.
Later on, it was brought to the city of 10,000 Buddhas when we moved up there. Because we used to go through, all morning. We would go through a crate and we'd get about a pan full of good stuff, and the rest of it would be compost.
Good compost, yeah.
By the time it came all the way from.
That's right.
From a long time.
It gave up the ghost somewhere near Santa Rosa. On the way north, yeah. But, when you're feeding at City of 10,000 Buddhas, you're feeding 200 people, it's in Gold Mountain it was a couple dozen, but what an experience for a kid who'd never actually gone hungry, my whole life. There was food in the refrigerator, there's food in the cupboard. And to realize suddenly where that food came from. And that if we didn't find anything outside the dumpster at Safeway, we didn't eat that today, So and at the same time, the Sherpa was teaching us about waste. And it's true that we throw out a lot of food. And that's blessings. So, in other words, when you live in the monastic Sangha, you're living alone together and finding out ways to create a space so that practice can continue unhindered for most people. And the schedule is probably the heart of the monastery. And while we haven't gotten to this level yet, in Chinese monasteries, the schedule is announced by sound. I've heard people say that Chinese monasteries, you could be blind and know exactly what's going on all the time in the Chinese monastery because there's a talk, dong, and then boom, ding, boom, ding. And from announcing 5 minutes before Zao Ke to when the sit is over, to little, to hour increments and 5 minutes before. So the sound landscape of a monastery is designed so that you don't have to use your eyes to stare and look, and you know exactly where to be at the right time. And that way, lots and lots of people can move efficiently through the practices without conflict, without words, without having to, argue or everyone pays attention to the time so that practice can go on. It's monasteries, as I understand the way they were set up in China, became a whole lot like a YMCA in a sense. I mean, what do we have in the world that is a similar situation? The YMCA is a place where the pool is there, the basketball court's there, the classes are going on, and you join, and everybody kind of follows the rules, and you can get a room at night if you have to. But it's there for people, for strangers, to be able to interact sufficiently to make it work without without bumping into each other. And a monastery has a similar kind of function, the way Shifu set it up. And who owns it? Well, the three jewels own it. The triple jewel owns the monastery. It doesn't belong to anybody. So, and there's an abbot who's in charge of things. Mostly he pays attention to the money or administration, and he's got his crew. The Wano, the cantor master, and then the cook in the kitchen, and then the farm branch, the growing the crop. There's a movie coming out that we don't know where it's at right now, but it's called One Mind. A fellow named Ted Berger got permission from the staff on Yunjushan Zhenru, True Suchness Monastery on Cloud Dwelling Mountain, Yunjushan in Zhejiang Province. He got permission to take his cameras into the monastery, into the Chan Hall, out into the fields, into the kitchen, and he filmed every part of the monastic day. And it's just magnificent. I think he has a cameraman and a sound guy. It's a crew of three. And Ted is a devout Buddhist. He bows to the Buddha. He's a very humble guy who just loves to make movies. He made Amongst White Clouds. Anybody see Amongst White Clouds? Yeah. Well, he's got a new film now called One Mind. And it takes the camera into places you've never seen, because you couldn't go, into the Chan Hall, where he's got pictures of monks, sitting in lines and making the tea, how they make tea when you have 50 monks meditating. And it's not what you think. It's not a really nice Yixing, purple clay pot. It's a enameled basin, the kind of thing you wash your face in, and pours the water and stirs it up with the tea and puts it in the kettle and puts the cloth around the handle so he won't burn his hand, and carries it into the Chan Hall. It's really, it's beautiful to watch. So, okay, when I request permission to enter monastic life, I think, may all living beings get non-retreating dharmas and be unobstructed in their minds. This could be translated as the non-retreating dharma, Buddha dharma that doesn't ever change or go backwards. It always moves you forward towards awakening. I don't know if non-retreating dharmas is the right translation. You could probably explain that, but in other words, it's forms. I think of dharmas, capital D, as kind of like molds. The way you put a cookie cutter over cookie dough and out comes a gingerbread man, right? A dharma, capital D, Buddha dharmas, are methods and techniques, shapes, forms that when you put it over the cookie dough of your body, mouth, and mind and your nature, out comes a arhat, out comes a pracheka Buddha, out comes a Buddha, out comes a bodhisattva. So if you think of dharmas as, so let's say the dharma of Chan. Okay, so in our tradition we, give people the basics, cross your legs, head up, and breathing, and eyes, and tongue, and all, and hands, and you take that shape, and if you're too much movement, then you still down. And if you're not enough, if you're tight, you relax, So too much is not right, not enough is not right. Get it just right, right in the middle. And that's the mold of a meditator. That's the form, the dharma of a meditator. And there's even a sense that the character fa in Chinese means to model after. Fa jik ta nega yangzi. You know, you model, you mold after, you take the form of that practice, and you become what that mold shapes you as. Now that's external, right? But there's something to it. In Japan, wow, when you go into the Soto school of Japan, the Soto Zen school, Dogen Zenji says, you know, Zazen is Buddha. They revere that posture. If as you're sitting, you are Buddha, you know, which is simplified to my mind, but it's like, there's something to it. And they revere that, and they get the posture just right. And walking, you are walking as Buddha, and you know. So they go even more into that idea that the Dharma is a mold, is a form. Okay, page 10. Please interrupt, please contribute, please comment. Don't wait to be asked, okay? Up at the top. When I take off my worldly clothes, I think, may all living beings diligently cultivate good roots and renounce all errors and obstructions. Okay, the key verb here is renounce. Renounce just means to get rid of. So what are you doing? Taking off your clothes. What? Your vest, your jacket, your tie, your suit coat, your, you know, Gucci shoes, your socks, the things that was your wardrobe. How much of us are invested in our clothes? A lot. My dad grew up in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And in Sherbrooke, for young people and even for adults, clothes were very important back then. I don't know how it is now, but a lot of your paycheck went into clothes, looking good, because it's the Quebecois are very social people. Lots of dances, lots of parties, lots of opportunities to see each other, you know, in public, and you always wanted to look good. And I just remember how, you know, people would pay so much money for clothes to be seen, just because they were going to make the, you know, la balle, and they'd show up and hey, pretty snappy, you know, good-looking clothes. And it just never occurred to me that was important. The way they did, was looking good, was really, really important. So when I take off those clothes, I think, may all beings, and here's a power word in the Avatamsaka Sutra, good roots. Okay, it's so funny, good roots. Shangan in Chinese. There's lots of commentary about why this is such a big deal. Why is good roots a big deal? And scholars, I read a scholar who came up with an interesting idea. He said it's because it's a rice culture. If you ever plant rice, what do? You start with a seedling and you push it down into the wet paddy field. It's really roots. Not the rice grains that come off that. That's later. It's the seedling, right? And if you've ever grown rice, you relate to these little green sprouts, about this tall, you know, and you put it down. And then when the rice comes off those. So what are we in the West? Seeds. We're a seed culture in the West, right? So plant down those wheat seeds, plant down those soybeans, plant down those potato seeds, right? Carrot seeds, tomato seeds. It's a difference in that agriculture is so fundamental. You know, how you relate, how you grow your starch. That's really key. So if it's corn, plant down corn. Maize, you know. Maize came from, if not Mexico, then Colombia, right? Most of our agriculture is indebted to Latin America. So good roots. Good roots are what? We're translating it now as wholesome qualities. Don't know if that's going to stay that way, but good roots, when it's not roots in a human, I mean it could be, but it's something invisible, it's qualities of your character. Diligently cultivate wholesome qualities of character. Now that makes sense. To diligently cultivate good roots, it sounds like you're a farmer, doesn't it? That's agricultural metaphor, right? So I'm out there growing stuff. Well, we're talking about people, so I got to translate that back into human terms. And what am I doing? I'm developing wholesome qualities in my character. Well, what would those be? Well, generosity, a sense of right and wrong, ethics, patience, a sense of energy, vigor in cultivating the good, stillness, clarity, purity, wisdom, kindness, compassion, joy, serenity, right? Those are all good roots. And there's more, you know. But that's I think, the way to think about this. As I take off my worldly clothes, I think, not just me, but all beings diligently develop those qualities in their character, and here's the verb, the key verb. Every one of these has a key verb. And get rid of errors, things you did wrong, and obstructions, things that stop you and block you from accomplishing what you want. So what a nice prayer, you know. That's a prayer, may all beings, but it's a practical prayer. It's not, you know, God bless these souls. It's that. But that's so general, you know, God be good. We pray for the victims of the massacre, you know, of the shooting. Well, that's good, not bad. But let's get specific and say, you know, may all beings accomplish what they want without anything getting in their way. No obstructions. Again, this realistic awareness that obstructions happen a lot. You know, you wanted to do it, but something came up. I couldn't, you know. I was out of gas, or had a flat tire, or, you know, things happen. So the Bodhisattva says, yeah, may everybody be able to get rid of negativity and accomplish their good wishes. Okay? Yeah, Phil?
I just wanted to say that a lot of it has to do with what I think about the errors and the obstructions. Some of it is related to self-image, for instance.
Little louder, Phil, so everybody can hear.
Self-image, things of the nature like I can't do something, or I have a lot of fears of a big fear, of course, of speaking in public, which we all have, or we all never grew up to speak in public. Fear of other people thinking about what you will do, things of that nature. So in the errors and the obstructions would be inside the mind, your own mind, and how you could alleviate those kind of things. A lot of it, to me, had to grow up when I was growing up. Those kind of things happen. You know, you just don't know that they happen, but they're there. You know? Socializing.
Yeah, you're just a kid from Chinatown. You can't be mayor, right? Or president. Hasn't happened.
Right.
Here's the black guy with an Islamic father. You can't be president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it happened, we were just talking, and this is one of your exercises of how would you feel think of a time when you were the other, when you were like the outsider.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things happen all of the time, and I think everybody was an outsider at one point.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
everybody. I don't think there was anybody who was totally inclusive in their whole life. So it's sometimes people feel like they're not included, although they know that that's a normal part of life, but they take it and they spiral down. So anyway, I thought that the obstructions was related to personal image as well.
Right. Right. Good. Yeah. Thanks. Phil's comment reminded me about some things that are coming up in my mind that I'm not totally clear about yet, and it's in every individual we have it's called the 3 obstructions, and sometimes there's different lists. So there's 业障, 报障, 烦恼障, and 所知障. Sometimes 3, sometimes 4. So there's what's called karmic obstructions. Then there's the obstruction of retribution. And it's like, what's the difference between those, and why? Usually it's 业报. The 2 words are put together, but why do they? There's a list in Buddhism of obstructions, things that actually block you. And there's karma, and then there's the retribution, the things that happen from the karma that you do. Okay, so how do I make sense of that? And I say I'm not totally clear on this, but I think every person, once we start to cultivate, once we start to actually look at the mind and think, I would like to change for the better. I'd like to be wise. I'd like to be a Buddha. I'd like to be a bodhisattva. I'd like to be compassionate. They're almost like there's wheels turning, and they have different times, and they have different phases, you could say, kind of like the moon. Every 7 days you go through quarter moon, full moon, quarter moon, new moon, kind of like that. What are they? There's habit, which would be karma. So is like the way I do things. So I have my viewpoints. I speak in this language. I reach for this food. That's kind of habitual behavior, and that brings about its own limitations. I don't speak Polish. I don't speak Spanish, even though I might want to speak Polish and Spanish, but I don't. So that's a limit. That's a karmic obstruction, because I do it that way. But at the same time, there's another wheel turning, which is past seeds already planted that have their own timing. That's operating at the same time. And the reason I brought this up is, it's like there are these 2 levels going on at once. I'm sure there are more even, but think of these 2. Sometimes you can be master of your obstructions. You're just totally on top of your game, right? It's all going really good, and everything's just working out great. And then, out of the blue, unexpected, something happens. You break your leg, or you get a phone call and discover that somebody's in trouble you care about. You got to stop everything and go deal with it, Or, out of the blue, the earthquakes. It's a big obstruction. It's a collective obstruction. The earthquakes, or something. And you just wonder, why? I was just about to get enlightened, and the phone rang, and I had to go stop meditating and go, put the fire out or something. Or somebody I care about was really sick, And it's as if inside us, if you think of the mind ground, the mind ground, think of it this way. I planted tulips. I planted, let's say I'm growing tomatoes. So I got tomatoes. In the spring, I put the vines in, I put the stakes in, and here come the tomatoes. And right in the middle of the tomatoes, it's March, and here come the bulbs. The lilies are coming up. I totally forgot there were lilies under the ground. There they were, and now it's the right time, and up come the lilies. Right in the middle of your tomatoes. You go, wait a minute, And then, I want to grow roses because I want to give them to my, wife or my sweetheart or my boss or something. And unfortunately, it's the wrong time of the year. You can't grow roses, but you can give chrysanthemums because it's chrysanthemum time, And you realize, oh, there's another law happening here, which is nature's seasons. You go, geez, my views are so limited, you know. But how interesting that obstructions can be in there, under the soil, waiting for the time to ripen, and up they come, totally unaware. And so, wisdom is learning about the systems in place. Those are also dharmas, you know. Dharmas can be big, big, big systems. Why are dogs different than cats? You know, they really, really are. Man, cats and dogs are so different. And then you go into dogs, and inside a dog is all different. It's because they are. And a wise person goes, oh, gee, look at the, oh, wow, whoa, you know. Who would have thought that birds have so many huge personalities, differences? And when the eagle flies over, or the hawk, all the little birds, first they shriek and then they hide. Because that big shadow, I saw this happen just outside my deck. You know, we have these huge eagles in Australia. And when they fly, they're kind of like osprey, they're definitely raptors. They will gobble down smaller birds. All the smaller birds go, watch out! And then pull in. And there's this signal that everybody obeys. It's like some birds do it sooner, but when that signal goes out, they all go pull back and hide their shadow, because the bird over on high sees the shadow as much as the bird. They all hunker down. And they don't give an all clear. I never heard the all clear, but it was like they kind of go, okay, it's safe. Then they come out and start doing their thing. But it's like they learn that, so they survive, you know. And who would have guessed that these birds know all this stuff? And we're just going, oh my goodness, wow, who knew? Inside me, I had this wheel turning. I'm mixing my metaphors all over the place here, but I had in my garden, there were these bulbs under the soil that they knew when the time was right, up they come, you know. So a wise person is like watching and listening, and because it's a big, big field that we find ourselves growing in, you know. So so thank you for that, Phil, that notion that, yeah, you just, retribution is, you wonder how much is real, how much is learned. If it's low self-esteem, you know, girls don't do science, you know. Just ask that female astronaut about how she doesn't do science, you know. But when I was in high school, it was expected to go into home ec. No guys did home economics. Home economics was sewing machines, baking, childcare. You know, what guy is going to put on an apron in sophomore in high school? He wouldn't have survived. He would have been laughed and, you know. But for a girl to say, actually, I'm not interested in home ec, I want to go do baseball. Oh. Trouble. Funny, huh? And yet, you know, so. Oh, yeah.
I think there's another side to this, which is I think if you do recite this long enough, you also want to help people through you don't want to obstruct people, basically, through their practice. You don't want to be an obstruction to people in their practice. Or at least help them through.
So give an example.
Say like if someone comes to the monastery and they don't feel comfortable, you get someone to help them, someone you know who would resonate with them in terms of personality, so that they feel comfortable and they make a friend, kind of, instead of saying, oh, you don't belong here, or you don't know what you're doing.
Were you there when the homeless guy who smelled came in?
Yes.
How do we find? We had this homeless guy who was a really good meditator. What was the situation? Describe
He
it.
just lighted incense, opened the windows, and made sure no one treated him badly.
There you go. Who would think? You know, somebody whose body smell was so bad that people would, you know, and yet he was sincere.
And it was in winter. It was very cold that day. After that, he sat after me, next to me. This is a test.
Yeah, right.
People turn around and look at you.
Came in late that day, and I closed the door because I was like, well, why did everybody close the door? It's freezing. And everybody's going, no.
Yeah. So why are we so attached to having the smells be just the way I like them? You know, because he stinks. That's why it's offensive. But it's like, it's just a smell, you know. Oh man,
no.
you realize.
You were there, you couldn't stand it.
So basically, the monks just smile,
Yeah, right.
nodded at everyone, say, oh, everything's okay, lighted incense.
So what happened?
Right, that's it. Then afterwards, was
And he
just
stayed the whole lecture.
yeah.
We use the
And
patient
everybody was
endurance.
just patient.
But no one,
But he never came back.
I don't think so. But no one bothered him. No one did anything to make him feel uncomfortable.
Maybe he was a bodhisattva to come.
There you go.
That's
There you go. We'll never know.
You can ask yourself what did you learn from it, you know?
Yeah,
For sure.
Stay away.
yeah, I think that was a good time to observe how habitually we move towards people like that and see if it needs.
Yeah, and you know, one thing to do is to offer him a shower.
Yeah.
But then again, you just don't know. You know, who is this person? So yeah, not obstructing people. We got to move on. Yes, hi, Allison. Go ahead.
So you were mentioning,
Raise your voice.
how our retribution and how various things we plant can pop up at certain moments. So you mentioned the example of you could just break your leg or something happens out of the blue, you said. So how can one know that they have a sense of control when things out of nowhere happen and we cannot see the wheel of where that comes from?
Any Chinchuan?
I think
That's a good question.
our control. Well,
He's not in control. I called on him.
yeah. Unexpected.
Or not
But-
even just control, but how can we look at that and take it to move forward?
At least for myself, I see that that's largely why I'm practicing, is because it's actually not that everything comes out from the blue, is that we just don't see it because of our confusion. We got coverings that cover us over so we don't see the potential relationships between things. And so by calming down the mind, I start realizing, wait, the way I speak actually causes other people to get angry at me. It's not just people are just angry at me for no reason out of the blue. It's something that I might be doing that might be planting those seeds. And so what I find is that actually when we hold the precepts, or say we're in this environment, it's about 99% of all the kind of bad things that potentially could happen in the world, somebody attacking somebody else, somebody lying to somebody else, disappear because we have an environment where the conditions for those seeds to arise are, it's more difficult for them to arise. But at the same time, on the flip of that is that you start cultivating seeds that are kind of buried under that you've done in the past that you usually haven't faced start to come out. And it comes out as sickness, it comes out as, you got a bad knee, it came out with various things. And then my sense is you just be patient. You use the Dharma of patience because there's a lot of things we've done in the past and we just kind of take responsibility for it to kind of continue on. And that sense of control, I guess, for me is actually the ability to work on this at a very deep level is really real. Because my experience before in the world was, it was just all kind of going back and forth. You never really make any progress in what's going on. And when you start practicing, you get more clarity, and then you start working through these deeper issues, and as you work through them, you actually feel progress. You actually feel like, okay, I freed myself from something. And there's a kind of more and more liberation that you get. So you could say the control isn't immediate, I guess. It's not saying something like, okay, I've got control over everything. It's I'm not sure it's really a goal. It's a kind of freedom of mind that you're kind of happy and joyful and able to be resilient to what's going on.
The word you're looking for is balance.
Balance. Yeah, things work. Things kind of work out, even when things bad happen. It's like the attitude of mind that we bring to it. So it could be a lesson in life, and we just take it in stride. So the analogy that Reverend Heng Sure gave about sitting in meditation, the phone rings, and you miss the enlightenment. Well, actually, the enlightenment is probably in the phone ringing.
There you go. Balance, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it wasn't what I thought, it was what came. Oh, that's.
Just like the smelly person coming into the Buddha hall, right? How we deal with that, it could be a chance to practice patience, or get practice the time that I want to get rid of this person, right? That's on the mind.
Or have empathy.
Or empathy.
So the only thing you can control is your attitude.
May I ask in response?
Raise your voice.
Oh, may I ask in response? So if something happens out of the blue, from what I'm hearing, it seems like that was a seed I planted somewhere, sometime, and it's popping up. And it's a feeling of confusion where, okay, I see this produce coming out in this, what I've planted, but it's challenging when I can't see, I don't know what I planted. I can't see the connection, I can't see the cause, and here's the condition, and I'm left with it. I'm thinking, I don't even remember planting this. This is really bad.
Welcome to consciousness.
Pardon?
Welcome to consciousness.
So, and in that situation, which the out of the blue, how is the way to look at it trying to find that cause, or controlling, or not controlling, just working on your attitude and responding? All those things.
Yeah. You're looking directly at the big questions, right? And there's some. I think the best we can do in approaching those big questions is to get some fundamental principles that seem to work mostly. Things like, to an ignorant person, everything happens out of the blue. To an awakened person, they say, Master Hua would say, even bodhisattvas are not completely clear about cause and effect in the 3 periods of time. It's too complicated. Okay? Buddhas are clear. Even bodhisattvas, hang on one second. Don't lose that thought. Even bodhisattvas, they still have, their vision is limited to a certain, how far back they can see what cause produced this result. So that's kind of a given. We have to kind of accept that. And the point of meditation and getting to this balance that we were talking about is so that you can be clear on the seeds you're planting now. There's a phrase that goes, bodhisattvas fear causes, but not results. Ordinary people fear results, but not causes. Okay, so a bodhisattva, knowing that cause and effect is true, plants very carefully. Because she knows that planting this, there's going to be a result. So she's careful with the causes. When the results come, she takes them because she knows she did it. Nobody else brought that cause to her. An ordinary person covered with desires and self, careless when they plant the seeds, and then when the results come, it's like, oh no, how did this happen? Right? So those are kind of basic principles. Another one is that repentance, as Jin Chuan was talking about, there are ways to get into the mechanics of it that the Buddha described, which is repentance. And in our very same sutra, in another chapter of it, it says, if all of the deeds of a single person done over lifetimes was visible, if instead of being invisible the way it is, kind of these invisible patterns and energy, if suddenly everything that I have done in this life and in past lives suddenly appeared, kind of like shows on the TV, it would fill up space and there'd be no room for anyone else, right? It's because they're invisible, then we're all crammed in here together that we don't know what we've done. And all those are still there. That's Master Hua says, it's cause and effect is like a big pot of zhou, juk. It's a big pot of rice gruel. Here's a piece of carrot, here's a bit of celery, here's a corn kernel, and here's a bunch of rice. And it's all like this, all mixed up. So that's, how are you going to control that? You don't. And if the control is an illusion. But what you do is you plant carefully now.
And accept
And then what's coming is coming.
Yeah.
And they say big disasters become small, small disasters disappear.
And don't even try and figure out where
You watch and you be amazed and you try to help other people.
And you can always repent. Like
Yeah,
repent.
and that, that's hope. Sheila.
Lord.
Go Sheila had her hand.
No, just like you've already said it, but like on a practical level, I'm a big fan of affirmations, as Alejandro knows, and Post-its. And so like on an everyday thing, I just kind of contemplate on, for me, one, I don't try to figure out if stuff comes up that I feel like it's bad or uncomfortable. I wish I didn't, have experienced it. I just relax. One of the things I have up there is like relax and let go. I mean, that's the bottom line. And then another one is just acceptance. Just I accept it. And then the third one is I don't try to figure it out, because that makes, like for me sometimes, I've always remembered this saying, it's like I'm already suffering and then I add more suffering by trying to figure it out. So it's like a head on top of a head. So I'm like, just accept it, let go, don't try to figure it out. That makes me crazy. And then the other one, I think, which is one of the hardest things for me, is that because of my spiritual practice, the meditation, I'm aware of what I'm doing. And sometimes I don't have that oomph to make a different decision. So I'm aware of that, I see what I'm planting. Boy, and I plant it anyway. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, well, it's going to come up. So then I wait for it to come up. But I think that's been the hardest part for me, is that there's certain habits that I have that sometimes I don't have the oomph to make a different choice. Although the biggest thing is, at least I'm aware, like my practice has given me, I'm not ignorant. Most of the time I'm not ignorant. But, I'm aware of when I'm doing it. It's like, I'm doing it anyway. That's been the hardest.
That's the ye bao, the habit. Those habits are grooved in. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what you were saying about, you were talking about we can, pay attention to how we plant seeds, but we can also, what we're doing here during this session is paying attention to what comes up. Taylor mentioned this. So we're watching our minds, because our conscious minds, or the sixth consciousness in Yogacara, is where we can actually see what's arising. We can't see what we've already planted. It's in our subconscious. But when it ripens, when that karma ripens, and it arises in the sixth consciousness, then we can become more aware of what's actually happening in the mind, and we can train ourselves to become more and more aware of more and more subtle things. So that's part of our practice as meditators. That's what we're doing. So we can catch that and learn how to respond in ways that are...
Compared to my Irish ancestors, fill them up again, lads. I'll buy the next round. That's unskillful coping, but it's what most people do. They don't do what Lauren said, become more and more aware and watch the subtle. No, guys, saints be praised. God is good.
Yeah. As we become aware, we can integrate these things into our consciousness. And so the things that are really scary and we fear, and so we're always trying to distract ourselves doing something else to get over it.
I gotta check my email, excuse me.
Turn on a song, eat food. People eat food all the time. And there was like some kind of program on NPR about how fat people are in America because they just can't deal with their own mind. And they're just constantly eating because it changes, your neurons and your emotional state immediately. food changes it immediately. So people just keep stuffing their face and they're getting really fat. But if you pay attention, you can integrate all of these elements into your conscious awareness and expand that awareness.
Okay, can I make a comment here, and then we'll go to Darius. Notice how the word God has not come into the conversation until I brought it in a joke. Theistic religions, most of the world's religious people give it to God. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. And that's not a slam. That's to say, that's the answer preferred by most humans. There's a small group of people who say, well, that's good, but actually that's not my experience. My experience is I had a lot to do with what happened to me. It wasn't in the mind of God. And it wasn't fate, and it wasn't chance, the luck of the draw, and it wasn't chaos either. It was actually something I said that made her so upset. It was actually when I called him a name that he punched me. If I hadn't called him the name, and that's what profoundly not theistic. The things we've been saying in this room have nothing to do with a supreme creator. Just want to point that out, just for contrast, because this is countercultural, universally countercultural. People who say, actually, I'm responsible. Notice? I mean, we're in a world that does not agree with that view. We're in a world where most people give it to one or the other of the gods. Okay? All right.
A comment and a quick story. One thing that's really helpful for me when things come up unexpectedly is to remember that it's just a seed that's sprouting, and then that it's passing, that it's only temporary, and that it's changing, and that ultimately it's empty, so it's just passing through. And if I can just watch it long enough and stay with it and go, oh, this is just a seed that I planted in the past that's now sprouting, and soon it's going to be gone and something else will come up from it. If I can just hold it, it's very helpful. And knowing that it's not going to last forever, that it's temporary. And then I've been really trying to watch my mind a lot, and I had an interesting experience where I saw someone and I said, oh, this person's is interesting. I must have some affinities with this person. And then it was very strange. It was like I saw this ping in my mind. It was like this, it was like ping, and it was like, oh, a seed. It was almost like I had the thought. I was like, oh, I'm planting a seed right now. And I said, oh, I'm gonna run into this person. I know for sure. Like, I literally just planted the seed with my mind somehow. And sure enough, I was somewhere where I normally wouldn't be, and then I just ran into them unexpectedly. Like the causes, conditions just came together. So from watching my mind, it was almost like I could see that I planted that seed at that moment with that thought.
And that person gave you a water bottle and became your best friend? That's the best gift you ever got.
I think Andrew.
Wait a second. Omar, can you only get? It was Andrew had his hand. Then we'll
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, Omar. Andrew.
Since we're talking about seeds, one of the analogies that the Buddha gave was the karma is the seed, and then the field that the seed is planted in is consciousness, different consciousnesses, like the different sixth sense consciousnesses, and then the watering of the seed is the actual clinging and craving. So when you see, a plant, something pop up like a weed, you see that it's bad, you don't want it there. So, as these things pop up, you choose, like, you see it, and you say, am I going to keep feeding that? Am I going to keep, nourishing it? So, one of the ways that, these things pop up out of the blue, but as they pop up out of the blue, just paying attention to them, you start to see, the nature of cause and effect a little bit clearer as you pay attention to things more and more. So,
right on.
As things pop up, choose whether you nourish it or not, not to nourish it, and then that'll give you, as Lauren said, you can start seeing things more.
but it all depends on having no static in your mind, and we fill our minds with so much static all day long, I mean, I should speak for myself, but it's just so hard to it's never not there, that awareness, but we fog it out, cloud it out, drink it out, smoke it out. So it's just, to get people to sit still. I had these college students, right? 18-year-olds, 19 and 20-year-olds. And they are meditating for the first time, for the most part, usually 30 of them. And they're in there, and you can see of 30 people sitting, 30 college students from all over the US and Australia. And they're being quiet for the first time in their lives. And of 30, like 5, well, you can just see they get really still, and they heard something, and they caught the broadcast for the first time. And the others are like, are we done yet? It's like, this is too much. And some of them are just averse, like, I don't want to sit here any longer, And then I get them to write journals, and what did they hear? What did they notice? And then 6 of them really catch it and go, hey, boy, that was really, So this Andrew's principles require you to have silence so you can notice. If it's not that the signals are not there, it's just the noise drowned it, So yeah, if that's how important is some practice, and having somebody show you that you can sit still. Doug has a theory that how does it go? That if you suddenly stop people from distracting themselves, what happens if you put them all out in the cabin on the mountain?
Yeah, that's what you do. Just put everybody in the mountain for 1 day, then 3 days, then 7 days. And the mind is just naturally there. I mean, it would have to adjust over time, and slowly but surely that mind would emerge. But you have to put them under pretty extreme, nowadays you'd have to put them under pretty extreme conditions compared to the life they're living, for sure. So, but you can see that, I mean, you were mentioning that, so when I used to have the high school kids over there and just sitting for like 30 minutes for the first time they ever sat quietly, and they actually recognized that they could actually sit quietly in their own mind. Just that recognition in them in itself was like a huge awakening. So.
Omar?
I wanted to say that
You were pointing to Andrew. You were being the bodhisattva's
You just
direct.
saying that Andrew had his hand up.
Andrew Henderson, good. I got 2 for 1 there. That's good. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, 4 minutes, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, a lot of verses to go here. So, what happens next is the bodhisattva shaves his head, puts on the precept robe, and then, having truly left the home life. Okay, so the external signs. Let me read them. When shaving my head, I think, may all beings forever leave behind defilement and dust and achieve the ultimate in still quiescence. That's Buddhahood, or nirvana, actually, is the ultimate. When I put on the precept robe, I think, may all living beings have undefiled minds and complete the great immortal's way. That's the Buddha, great immortal. That's another title. Having truly left the home life now, shaved your head, put on the robe, I think, may all living beings leave the householder's life like the Buddha to rescue and protect all beings. And now, the next 3 are immortal. Can we read these together? Let's read the next 3 together. Here we go. In taking refuge with the Buddha, I think, I vow that living beings continue the Buddha's lineage and make the unsurpassed resolve. In taking refuge with the Dharma, I think, may all living beings enter deeply into the sutra treasury and have wisdom like the sea. In taking refuge with the Sangha, I think, may all living beings unite and lead the great assembly, one and all in harmony. Okay, what did we just read? To the Dharma I return and rely, vowing that all living beings deeply enter the sutra treasury and have wisdom like the sea. Sometimes there are passages in certain sutras that come out of the sutra into daily use, and they become immortalized in practice. This is one of them. These are the 3 refuges in their verse form, and they're slightly different. The Chinese is slightly different. It's not Fa Wu Shang Xin, it's Fa Wu Shang Yi in the sutra. fa wu shang xin. But this is the source of the three writ. Zi gui yi fo dang yan zhong sheng. Right here. This is where they came from. So, three refuges. So our hero, our protagonist in our chapter, who's going through all these experiences, leaving home now, takes refuge. Takes refuge as the Buddha, and his vow is, may it be the case that, oh, look. I see, we missed one. In taking refuge with the Buddha, I think I vowed living beings. That should be, may all living beings. Missed it. Okay, I blew that. That's my spell checker should have found it. Okay, may all living beings continue the Buddha's lineage and make the unsurpassed Bodhi resolve, the wish to wake up. Taking refuge with the Dharma, may all living beings enter into the sutra treasury, accomplish, master all of the Buddha's teachings and have wisdom like the ocean, vast, no shore, how much wisdom. Taking refuge with the Sangha, may all beings unite and lead the great assembly. Not just humans, but other spiritual beings. One and all in harmony. Nobody fighting with each other.